does a single social media post about a Hollywood director's tragic death explode into a national political firestorm? And how does it manage to draw condemnation not just from opponents, but from a president's own allies? In this explainer, we're going to unpack the post, the surprising bipartisan backlash, and the defense of a communication style that is absolutely reshaping modern politics. It all kicked off with this post right here. Now, in response to the tragic deaths of filmmaker Rob Reiner and his wife, President Trump did offer condolences. But he also attributed their passing to something he calls Trump-Derangement Syndrome. And it's that specific framing that really set the stage for the absolute firestorm that followed. So, to really understand the controversy, you first have to separate the facts of what happened from the narrative that was being created. What did the police actually report? And how different was that from the story being told in this viral post? And this is where you see the two realities just completely collide. On one side, you have the police investigation. It points to a tragic domestic situation with the son as the suspect and absolutely no evidence suggesting any kind of political motive. But on the other side, you have the president's post, which immediately frames the whole thing through a political lens. Two totally different stories. So you might think that when reporters asked him about it, he might, walk it back a little. Nope. Instead, he doubled down right there in the Oval Office. He made it super clear he didn't like Reiner and brought up Trump derangement syndrome all over again. This wasn't some accident. The message was intentional. The reaction was, it was immediate. And what's really fascinating here is just how broad it was. The condemnation wasn't just coming from the president's usual critics. It was coming from all over the political and cultural map. The backlash really kicked off in Hollywood, with people like Jimmy Kimmel just expressing total disbelief. I mean, think about that for a second. A late-night host, a guy whose whole job is to satirize politics, said he actually thought the post had to be fake. That really tells you how far over the line these comments were seen. And it wasn't just comedians. Musicians like Jack White weighed in too, calling the post a corrupt and narcissistic sin. This shows that the feeling went way beyond just political disagreement. It got into the sense of moral outrage over using a family's personal tragedy. Okay, this is where the story gets really interesting, because the criticism started jumping across party lines. You have Republican Congressman Thomas Massie calling the post inappropriate and disrespectful, basically challenging anyone in his own party to try and defend it. And it's a big deal when even some of the president's most loyal, most vocal supporters in Congress started drawing a line in the sand. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is usually a staunch defender, came out and said, "This isn't about politics, it's a family tragedy." That kind of public break from key allies showed just how toxic this post was considered to be. So the big question is, was this just a one-off, a slip-up? Or is this part of a bigger pattern? Well, to really get the full context, you have to look at the documented history of this very specific communication style. Yeah, this is definitely not the first time the president has made some pretty controversial remarks about political figures after they've passed away. As you can see from this timeline, sources point to really similar comments he made about Senator John McCain and Representative John Dingell. It's a clear pattern. And the pattern isn't just about people who have passed away. It also extends to his critics who are very much alive, especially members of the press. Sources have documented a long history of him using personal insults like piggy and terrible person against reporters from all kinds of news outlets. This isn't just about words either. It seems to be part of a larger social media strategy. Just take a look at this YouGov poll. It's about a totally different controversy over an AI-generated video, but you see the exact same trend: widespread public disapproval that cuts right across party lines. I mean, look at that. Even 43% of Republicans found it unacceptable. And what this really points to is a major gap, right? A gap between the social media strategy and what the broader public thinks. When you have majorities of Americans, including a lot of people in the president's own party, calling this stuff unpresidential and offensive, it suggests a style that might fire up a specific base, but turns off a lot of other people. Now, you might think all this drama was just happening out in public, but according to reports, the Reiner post was also causing some serious friction behind the scenes among the president's own top advisors, right there in the West Wing. I mean, just listen to this quote. It is a rare and pretty striking look at how things are seen internally. His own chief of staff, Susie Wiles, reportedly described him as having an alcoholic's personality with an obsessive and invincible mindset. Now, her team later called the article a hit piece, but they never actually denied she said those words. So what you're seeing is a picture of an administration that seems to be really struggling with its own leader's communication style. The journalist Michael Wolff reported that even loyal staff members are feeling unsettled, worried about what they see as a lack of emotional judgment in public statements like the one about Reiner. Okay, so on one hand, you've got this huge public outcry, and even reports of people on the inside getting nervous. But, and this is a big but, for his supporters, this communication style isn't a flaw. It's a feature. There's a really strong argument that defends this whole disruptive approach as a necessary political strategy. The entire defense really boils down to one core belief, that the mainstream media is not a neutral referee. They see it as an active and hostile opponent, and from that point of view, playing by the old polite rules of presidential discourse is like bringing a knife to a gunfight. And to make their case, defenders will point to what they see as a glaring double standard in the media. They argue that when President Trump uses insults, it gets wall-to-wall condemnation. But when his political opponents use similar or even cruder language, the press often downplays it or just ignores it. And that all leads to the heart of the argument. For this side, civility has been tried and it has failed. They believe past Republican leaders who played it nice and civil were still met with total hostility from the media. So for them, they don't just want a fighter. They see it as absolutely essential for political survival. This whole firestorm leaves us with a really critical question for our politics today. What happens when a leader's style becomes the story? When the way something is said generates just as much controversy as the substance of what's being said, it forces all of us to rethink the presidency, the media, and the very nature of how we talk to each other in public.